Welcome to video 8. And in this video, what I'd like to do is continue talking about the critical questions. In the last video, we addressed how we go around answering the question, what do customers get for their money? How we build value. Okay. In this one, what I'd like to do is talk about the question, how can families fund the purchase? How do they pay? I'd like to talk about why it's a critical question and why funding plays such a key role in the discovery visit. I'll do a skills demo of how to do it, and as we go through, we continue to build our tour where it fits in the tour. Okay, so the question: how can families fund the purchase? Why is it critical? Well, firstly, what we know is whenever we talk about money, tension is likely to go up. Okay. So I want to talk about it as often as possible to normalize it. By talking about the funding options and coupled with that, the price examples that we give to customers, it really supports them and helps them to formulate a budget where we have, when we're in low tension areas, with an indication of what their down payment, deposit and monthly payments, what that creates in real life purchasing power. Okay. And it really is a case of normalizing the funding, because the reality is the vast majority of our customers do fund their purchase in one way or another one. Okay, so how do we actually answer the question? Well, again, we pick ourselves a low tension area. It's probably somewhere between price example 1, price example 2 on our discovery visit, on our tour. And we remember to use ear, and it's going to sound something along the lines of this. Okay, if you remember earlier, family, I did say to you that I would answer a number of key questions. And one of those key questions was, how historically have customers gone, how have families funded this purchase in the past? If it's all right with yourself, what I'd like to do is just quickly talk you through those options. Is that okay? Okay, super. Okay, we do have a very limited number of families who are in the lucky position, the fortunate position, to be able to purchase outright. Write a check, bank transfer, whatever. They tend to be the exception rather than the rule. We do have families who look at what I call sort of third-party funding. Now, third-party funding can be sourcing a loan somewhere else, guaranteed against the house, within the family, personal loans, stuff like that. Or it could be multi-members of within one family making a purchase, or it could be robbing a bank or stealing it from granny. I don't know. Okay, there are a number of different options. Okay. The third option, which in fact is what the vast majority of our customers use, is one of our funding packages. We have a relationship with a number of mainstream banks, and the numbers and the down payments, the deposits and the monthly payments of what I've talked about today are based on all those. The fourth option, we do understand not everybody in the world has an absolutely perfect credit history. And so we do have access to a specialist funder, which we call Funding for All, where families who do not have perfect credit, for whatever reason, are still able to get funding. What tends to happen with that, it tends to be a slightly higher deposit down payment, and frequently the interest rate will be marginally higher. Okay, so just to recap, we have families who purchase outright, we have families who go for third-party funding. I always, to be honest, I find that generally ends in tears. We have families, a big chunk of our families use one of our mainstream funding packages, but there are those without perfect credit histories, and we have a thing called Funding for All or specialist funding for them. Would it be okay if I asked you, which one of those would you like me to tell you more about? Okay. End of skill demo. That's very important, because what does the customer's response tell you? Because if a customer tells you, or tell us about that specialist funding for all, what's that just told you about how they perceive their credit history? Because later on, when we start formulating budgets and we start working out the very best things to show those customers, understanding that they may not be mainstream funding is super important, because it generally requires higher deposits, higher down payments, and quite often the monthly payment will go up slightly. So it's really useful to know that. It gives us a great indicator of where the customers are financially. Okay, so what are the downsides of the outright purchase and third-party funding? Well, firstly, my experience is paying out a great big chunk of money. It takes a long time to save money, and it's a scary thing to see it all disappear. There are exceptions. Third-party funding, the banks generally don't understand our product. Some form of home equity, home loan, always takes an extremely long time. You get lawyers involved and whatever. We can't control the process. What I absolutely know is that if one looks at all the cancellations, all the deals that failed to complete, no matter how far you go back, I've done this exercise in the UK, I've done it in Canada, I've done it in France, I've done it all sorts of different places. The answer is always the same, okay? People who on the day say they are going to provide the funds are 5 times, a minimum of 5 times more likely not to complete than someone who takes a funding package through ourselves. Because what are the upside from us doing the funding package? Well, we do the work. It's quick, easy, simple. Generally, we control the timing. The financial institutions, the banks that we use, tend to understand the product. It's an off-the-shelf product that they supply. It's much easier to illustrate when we know what the appropriate funding package is. It's much easier to explain to a customer the effect of extra monthlies. So it's not an extra 3,000 down, it's 75 a month. It's a much more manageable, understandable amount of money for our customers. Whilst it's not an immediately obvious, in the future it makes it much easier for us to trade up or part exchange the customer in the future. Makes it easier for them to buy something bigger and better. Okay? So the key, however, is what we absolutely know: when we've set up a funding package for customers, as opposed to them saying they're going to purchase outright, they are the people who say they're going to buy outright or third-party funding are a minimum 5 times more likely not to complete. Why risk it? Okay, so when, where, how? It's when, as I say, it's between a couple of pricing examples, probably the first and the second. Pick a low tension area, i.e., because we're going to be talking about money, you know that the tension is going to go up. Remember ear, okay? Remember earlier as a family, I said to you one of the questions I was going to answer for you was this. Here's the answer, and just to recap on the key points. Which one of those would you like to know more about? That question is super important. Okay. So, why is it important? To recap, it addresses tension, because we can talk about money frequently in a low tension area. It helps them to build a budget. It helps them to understand the power of a deposit and a monthly, of a down payment and a monthly payment. Okay? It sells our funding package, and it, without question, reduces cancellation rate. Super. Thanks.